In a stretch of forest in southeastern Brazil, there is a highway with cars and trucks roaring across it at full speed, and directly above that traffic hangs a strange, narrow bridge made of ropes and branches, built for animals that weigh less than a small bag of sugar. It was designed for one specific creature, a small orange monkey with a wild lion-like mane, one of the rarest primates on Earth, so endangered that at one point, there were only a few hundred of them left alive in the entire world. The bridge was built so that these monkeys could cross a road that had cut their forest, and their family, in two. But when biologists set up cameras to watch who actually used it, something happened that no one had fully planned for. It was not only the monkeys. Animal after animal after animal began to appear on that thin rope crossing, high above the cars. Species the builders had never designed it for started using it night and day to move between two halves of a forest that a road had torn apart. A bridge built for 200 monkeys quietly became a lifeline for an entire community of creatures. This is the story of that bridge, and of the forest it was trying to stitch back together. Take 1 second to subscribe before we dive in. You will not want to miss where this one ends. To understand the bridge, you first have to understand the animal it was built for and the forest it lives in, because both are among the most threatened on the planet. The monkey is called the golden lion tamarin. It is small, bright reddish-orange, with a long, silky mane framing a dark little face, which is exactly why it earned the name lion. It lives in family groups. It eats fruit and insects and small animals, and it spends almost its entire life up in the trees. It rarely comes down to the ground, and it is not built to travel across open spaces. It is a creature of the canopy, of branches and vines and leaves, moving through a connected world of treetops. These family groups are tightly bound. A group of golden lion tamarins moves together, sleeps together in tree holes at night, and shares the work of raising the young, with older siblings and the father helping to carry the infants. They are territorial, defending a patch of forest as their own, and they know that patch intimately, every fruiting tree, every safe path through the branches. This is an animal deeply rooted to a specific place and a specific set of trees. Take those trees away, or cut them off from the next patch, and you are not just removing scenery, you are dismantling the entire map the animal lives by. And that connected world is the problem, because the golden lion tamarin lives in only one place on Earth. It lives in the Atlantic forest of Brazil, a band of rainforest that once ran for thousands of miles along the Brazilian coast. This forest is separate from the more famous Amazon. It is its own world, with its own species, many of which exist nowhere else, and it has been devastated. Over centuries of logging, farming, cattle ranching, and the growth of some of the largest cities in South America, the Atlantic forest was cut down again and again. Only a small fraction of the original forest still stands, and what remains is not one great block of green. It is broken into thousands of scattered fragments, islands of forest surrounded by farmland, pasture, roads, and towns. For an animal that cannot cross open ground, that fragmentation is a slow disaster. Imagine a family of tamarins living in a patch of forest. They can move freely through their own patch, but the moment the trees end, they are stuck. Beyond the edge is open pasture, or a road, and to a small tree-dwelling monkey that open space is a wall. They cannot easily reach the next patch of forest, even if it is only a few hundred meters away. And that creates a trap that is far more dangerous than it looks. When a population is cut into small, isolated groups, each little group is on its own. The monkeys in one fragment can only breed with the other monkeys in that same fragment. Over generations, that leads to inbreeding, because there are simply no new partners arriving from outside. The gene pool shrinks. The animals can become less healthy, less fertile, more vulnerable to disease. And on top of that, a small isolated group is fragile in a much simpler way. One bad event, a fire, an outbreak of disease, a stretch of bad luck, can wipe out an entire fragment, and because it is cut off, no monkeys from anywhere else can move in to replace them. The empty forest just stays empty. By the late 20th century, the golden lion tamarin had been pushed right to the edge of this trap. Decades of forest loss had reduced the wild population to a terrifyingly small number. At its lowest point, There were only a few hundred golden lion tamarins left in the wild, scattered across broken fragments of forest, many of them isolated from one another. A species that had lived in these trees for ages was down to a remnant, and the pieces of that remnant could not reach each other. What happened next is one of the real conservation success stories of our time, and it took decades of work. Brazilian scientists and conservationists, working through an organization dedicated to saving this one monkey, launched an enormous effort. They ran captive breeding programs, using tamarins from zoos around the world, and reintroduced them into protected forest. They worked with private landowners to protect the fragments of forest that still had monkeys in them. They replanted trees, and crucially, they began to focus not just on protecting the fragments, but on connecting them. Because protecting a dozen isolated islands of monkeys is not the same as protecting one healthy population. The islands needed to be linked. The most important way to link them is with corridors, strips of replanted forest that physically join one fragment to another, so animals can walk from one to the next through continuous trees. Over the years, conservationists planted these forest corridors, slowly reconnecting patches that had been separated for a long time. It was patient, difficult work, growing a forest link tree by tree across land that had been cleared. But then they ran into an obstacle that trees alone could not solve: a highway. Cutting straight through this landscape is a major road, a busy federal highway with heavy traffic. On one side of it lay important forest. On the other side lay more forest, including areas essential to the future of the tamarins. The road was a hard barrier, splitting the tamarin's habitat almost in half. You cannot simply grow a forest corridor across 4 lanes of moving trucks, and for a monkey that will not cross open ground, that highway was not just an inconvenience, it was a lethal wall. Some animals that did try to cross roads on the ground were hit by vehicles and killed. The highway was quietly bleeding the population and keeping the 2 sides of the forest genetically separated. So the conservationists tried something different. If the monkeys could not cross the road on the ground and could not cross it through the canopy because the canopy was cut, then they would give them a new canopy, an artificial one. They would build a bridge over the highway, up in the air, made of rope and wood, designed to look and feel enough like branches that a nervous, tree-loving monkey would be willing to climb across it, high above the traffic. This is a harder idea than it sounds. You cannot just string a rope over a road and hope. The crossing has to connect to real trees on both sides, so the animals can flow onto it naturally from the canopy. It has to be high enough and stable enough that the animals feel safe. And above all, the animals have to actually choose to use it, which no one can force. You can build the bridge, but you cannot make a wild monkey trust it. There was also a real question of patience. A structure like this is not used the moment it goes up. Wild animals are cautious by nature, and a brand new object in their environment is treated with suspicion, not trust. The tamarins had lived their whole lives reading which branches were safe, which vines would hold, which roots led somewhere. A stiff rope strung across a gap of roaring traffic was nothing their instincts recognized. So the builders had to accept that they might wait months, watching an empty bridge, before a single monkey was brave enough to step onto it. The whole idea rested on a gamble that curiosity and the pull of the forest on the other side would eventually win out over fear. They built it anyway, a canopy bridge arching over the highway, and then they did the thing that makes this a real story instead of just a hopeful plan. They put cameras on it, and they waited to see who would come. And this is where it becomes incredible. The golden lion tamarins, the animals the bridge was built for, did learn to use it. Family groups approached the strange structure, tested it, and began to cross, moving from one side of their divided forest to the other without ever touching the ground or the road. For the first time, monkeys on one side of that highway could reach the monkeys on the other side. The 2 halves of the population were connected again, over the top of the traffic. On its own, that was already a victory, because it meant fresh genes could flow, new partners could be found, and the deadly isolation could begin to break. But the cameras showed far more than tamarins. Once a safe crossing exists over a road, it turns out that a whole community of animals wants to use it, because the golden lion tamarin is not the only creature trapped by that highway. The cameras recorded other species moving across the bridge, other animals of the forest that also needed to get from one side to the other and had been blocked all along. The structure built for one endangered monkey became a shared crossing for many kinds of wildlife, a single thin thread of safety over a river of traffic. A bridge designed for a couple of hundred tamarins was, in practice, reconnecting the movement of an entire slice of the forest. Think about what that means from the animal's point of view. For years, that highway had been a line that could not be crossed, a place where the forest simply ended in noise and danger and death. Generations of animals had lived and died on their own side of it, never reaching the other. And then, almost overnight in the scale of a forest, a new path appeared in the sky, and the barrier that had defined the edge of their world was suddenly something they could pass. A place that had only ever meant the end of the road became a way through. That is the moment that reveals the deeper truth of the whole project. The tamarin was never really alone. Saving it was never only about saving one orange monkey. The tamarin lives inside a web of other species, and the very same barrier that isolated the monkeys isolated countless other animals too. So the same solution that helped the monkeys helped all of them. Reconnect the forest for the tamarin, and you reconnect it for everything that shares the tamarin world. Now it is important to be honest about what a bridge like this can and cannot do, because the truth is more careful than a simple happy ending. A canopy bridge over a highway is not a cure. It is a patch, a clever and valuable patch, but a patch. It does not undo the loss of the forest. It does not bring back the thousands of square miles of Atlantic forest that were cut down long ago. A single crossing, or even several, cannot fully replace a continuous, unbroken forest where animals could once move freely in every direction. The bridge helps animals get over one specific barrier in one specific place. It is a repair on a wound, not a return to how things were. And the bridge only matters because of everything around it. A crossing over a road is useless if there is no protected forest on both ends for the animals to move into. It only works as one piece of a much larger effort: the replanted corridors, the protected fragments, the captive breeding, the decades of work with landowners and communities. The bridge is the final link in a chain, and every other link had to be built too. Take away the surrounding forest, and the bridge leads from nowhere to nowhere. There is also the simple fact that the golden lion tamarin is not safe yet. Thanks to all these efforts combined, the wild population has climbed back from a few hundred to a few thousand, which is a genuine and hard-won recovery. But a few thousand animals living in scattered, human-surrounded forest fragments is still a fragile situation. Disease can strike, forest can still be lost. The species still depends completely on people continuing to protect it and to keep its broken habitat connected. This is not a population that can now be left alone. It is one that survives because people are actively holding its world together. But even with all of that said, the bridge over the highway is a powerful thing, and not only for what it does physically. It is a change in how we think about roads and wildlife. For most of the age of the automobile, roads were treated as belonging only to us, as lines we draw across a landscape without asking what they cut through. The animals on either side were simply expected to deal with it, or to die trying to cross. The canopy bridge is a small reversal of that idea. It says that a road does not have to be an absolute wall, that with some rope, some wood, some understanding of how an animal moves, we can hand a piece of the crossing back to the creatures whose home we drove straight through. Today, above a busy Brazilian highway, that bridge still hangs in the air. Below it, cars and trucks rush past, most of the drivers never noticing it, never knowing what it is for. Above it, small orange monkeys with lion-like manes step carefully from branch to branch, crossing from one half of their forest to the other, and behind them, using the same slender path, come other animals of the Atlantic forest, quietly moving between two worlds that a road had split apart. Brazil built a bridge over a highway for 200 monkeys. What crossed it was so much more than 200 monkeys. It was a reminder that no animal is ever really saved by itself, that to rescue one creature, you have to mend the world it lives in, and that sometimes the difference between a species trapped and a species connected is a single thin line of rope, strung with care across the top of a road. If you enjoy true stories of the wild pulled back from the edge, stories most people never hear. Then like this video and subscribe. In the next one, we will follow another species the world had already written off. Take care of yourself and stay curious.